Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Hope the week's gone well. Let me start with some macro thoughts. I'm very bearish on the UK gilt, 10-year gilt, as I've been for a while. Here's one clear sign: UK inflation is poised to jump. This is from Sid Verma. Home thoughts: I couldn't resist this tweet. Sophia Loren: everything you see I owe to spaghetti. That's a thought. The rains came last night, and in the early morning the temperature always spikes just before the rains arrive, I find. So it's always a relief. This morning my bathroom was infused with a beautiful essence. Fleeting, momentary, made me remember being with my mum as a young boy. I don't think it was the Petri chore, and might well be some other plant. The gardener, who was from Karen and Melindy and charged us a fantastic fee, but seems to put things in the ground which are now turning up, I think. It was a beautiful aroma. Petrichor, of course, is the earthy scent produced when rains fall on dry soil. The word is constructed from the Greek petra, meaning stone, and ichor, the fluid that flows in the veins of the gods in Greek mythology. The term was coined in 1964 by two Australian CSIRO researchers, Isabel Joy Baer and Richard G. Thomas, for an article in the journal Nature. In the article, the authors describe how the smell derives from oil exuded by certain plants during dry periods, whereupon it is absorbed by clay-based soils and rocks. During rain, the oil is released into the air along with another compound, geosmin, a metabolic byproduct of certain actinobacteria, which is emitted by wet soil, producing the distinctive scent. Ozone may also be present if there is lightning. It's fantastic, isn't it? And you do actually really feel it. Some scientists believe that humans appreciate the rain scent because ancestors may have relied on rainy weather for survival. Then, this morning, Hannah asked me about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and I said, Hannah, Donald is ahead by 1%. And she says to me, how? And I told her about Aberdeen and Weiner and the computer, and that it was obvious emails deleted elsewhere were not deleted on Weiner's computer. And then I told her that I had spent an evening in Tramp with Donald Trump, Cosima von Bülow, and last but by no means least, Lynn Menuhin. She was impressed. Have a look at the link for Tramps. They got some hashtag out, Let's Get Tramped. I think next time I go, I'm going to go back. Tramp is a private members-only nightclub located on Jermyn Street in central London, founded in 1969 by Johnny Gold with business partner Oscar Lerman and Bill Offner. Tramp is considered to be one of the most exclusive members clubs in the world. It's a regular haunt for celebrities. It was sold by its founder in 2003. Pete Sellers, Joan Collins, Lisa Minnelli, Ringo Starr have all had their wedding receptions at the glitzy club. And then from there, I jumped to the news that the Chicago Cubs have pulled off a very big win. Take it 3-3. Have a look at this. Is Wrigley Field, and it's just down the road from where my brother lives in Chicago, and him and his son Mikhail are very big fans, and I'm sure they're very excited. The Cubs routed the Cleveland Indians and sent the World Series to Game 7. Jim Roberts, who I follow on Twitter, tweeted on November the 1st, Trump and the Chicago Cubs both have about the same statistical chance of winning it all in November. Better than the chance he was giving it, I think. Political reflections: US election jitters, Wall Street on for 6th consecutive fall, a losing streak not seen since August 2015. Up a photograph of Donald Trump that Newsweek had posted. He apparently leads Clinton by 1 point in a new poll as enthusiasm declines. Voter preferences have held essentially steady, and she's now a slim point behind Donald Trump, a first since May, in the latest ABC Washington Post tracking poll produced for ABC. And I wrote several times about Trump, and I actually rated his chances from a while back. But interestingly, when I was rating his chances, he was at 33 on the prediction markets. He subsequently fell to less than 20, and now he's back around the 25, 26 level. And I said the second thing to observe is that event risk surely favors Trump, and we saw the first example of event risk in what the FBI saw fit to publish. Now, where will the world be in the event of a President Trump? Who really knows or can predict that? And I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing increased volatility, because Trump presidency is so unpredictable. One could argue, I said a week later, that we have entered a new age of populist policy making, that the Brexit began, the interest rate capping bill here, Duterte in the Philippines, all kinds of things, and Donald Trump. Let me put up another photograph of him. And then I came across this from Alan W. Silberberg, who says weaponized social media has been a thing since at least 2009. And of course, Donald Trump has been an extraordinarily effective weaponizer of social media, an exponent of information warfare, from Little Marco to Crooked Hillary and everyone in between. I call him Little Marco. Little Marco. Hello, Marco, Trump said. I call him Lying Ted, Trump said about the Texas senator on Super Tuesday. Let's say this is impossible to imagine. Low-energy Jeb Bush becomes president, Trump said of his fellow GOP candidate back in January at a rally in Bennington, Vermont. You've got to admit, he's turned it all on its head, and he's a linguistic warfare specialist. Takes me back to September 2012 when I quoted this article about information warfare in the US Army War Journal. One of the defining bifurcations of the future will be the conflict between information masters and information victims. The information warfare will not be couched in the rationale of geopolitics, the author suggests, but it will be spawned, like any Hollywood drama, out of raw emotions, hatred, jealousy, greed, emotions rather than strategy. Will set the terms of information warfare struggle. Just go to Little Marco, Lying Ted. And I asked then, what are the consequences of this new 21st century madding crowd? It's this new age of populism, a madding crowd which will be inflamed by a fellow with a camera and an account with YouTube. I was referring to something else then. Hector Marenko came out of nowhere on Twitter and has been putting out sort of tweets which appear very informed. He's now saying sources in the FBI said that Weiner wants immunity for underage sex crimes in exchange for Clinton Foundation and email scandal Ray Qatar pipeline. It's an interesting story that's being painted by some of these Trump folks, and Hector Marenko is one of them. Have a look at his Twitter page. Trump, Putin, Xi, and the cult of the strongman leader, Gideon Rachman and the FT, from Moscow to Manila, Beijing to Budapest, Ankara to Delhi. The nationalist strongman leader is back in fashion. If the US elects Donald Trump next week, it would be following an international trend, not leading it. The fascination with strongmen spans autocracies and democracies. China last week took a further dangerous step down the road to personalized autocracy when it announced that President Xi Jinping now represents the core leadership of the Communist Party. The patron saint of the world's strongman leaders is Vladimir Putin of Russia, whose personalized rules still retain some of the outward trappings of democracy. Look, he's very popular. So this is the other issue I think sometimes the West doesn't appreciate. His popularity is at 80%. Who's not going to be democratic in that situation? Alarmingly, Mr. Trump's political style has most in common with some of the most autocratic strongmen, such as President Putin and Erdogan. To different degrees, all these strongmen have encouraged personality cults, saying the parallel with the 1930s is unfortunately all too obvious. Then the economic shock of the Great Depression radicalized politics all over the world. Something similar may have happened following the financial crisis of 2008, a sense that the threat of international conflict is rising in Europe. The Middle East and Asia may have also fueled a demand for strong leaders. Rodrigo Duterte is the Donald Trump of the Philippines. Interesting fellow, isn't he, with his walking style. Nation-state as a fundamental unit of man's organized life has ceased to be the principal creative force. That was Zbigniew Brzezinski between two ages, the technotronic era, 1971. International banks and multinational corporations are acting and planning in terms that are far in advance of the political concepts of the nation-state, he said. Then in this article in Counterpunch, first we have to acknowledge that the decimation, the de facto balkanization of these countries is part of a plan. If it wasn't part of a plan, then the decision makers would change the policy, but they haven't changed the policy. The policy is the same. Brzezinski not only refers to this in the opening quote, he also explains what is taking place. The nation-state is being jettisoned as the foundation upon which the global order rests. Instead, Washington is erasing borders, liquidating states, and removing strong secular leaders that can mount resistance to its machinations in order to impose an entirely new model on the region. And this goes back to the Odin-Yenin plan. FBI releases documents from 2001 investigation into Bill Clinton pardoning late tax evader Marc Rich. The timing of that release was very interesting via its Twitter feed. FBI dumped 129 heavily redacted pages relating to the 2001 investigation of Marc Rich. Marc Rich was a very colourful character. Let me put up a photograph of him. A frightful story which is often at odds with the East Aleppo narrative of heroic rebel defenders and civilians fearful of a regime massacre. This is Fisk. The disconnect between sterling and UK bonds deepens as hard Brexit fears persist. Having thought that the UK was going to get an enormous lift from lower currency, I must say I've changed my mind, and I just think that politics is a straitjacket on sterling, and therefore sterling is going to continue to stay under pressure. Currency markets, let's take a look at what's going on. Euro, dollar, 110.62. That's popped a bit higher, hasn't it, after visiting levels below 109 not too long ago. Dollar index coming off the highs, 97.64. Japanese yen, 103.85. Let's keep an eye on that, because I think if Trump comes in, that thing's going to go below 100. Swissy, 0.9730. The pound, 122.37. The Australian dollar, 0.7632. India rupee 66.835, South Korean won 1149.55. We know why that's weak, because real shenanigans in sell. Brazil 323.75, that softened up a bit. Egyptian pound is irrelevant because there's no money at that rate of 887.91, and the rand stays firm at 1361.32. That's all about Gordon besting the South African president Zuma. It's about time he got bested by somebody. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart, come off the top, as you can see from that. Let's keep an eye. I think we're in a highly volatile, fluid period now for the markets, and it's the sort of time when you need to keep your powder dry and take opportunities as they present themselves, a little bit like the Brexit vote that night. Dollar Canada, let's take a look at where that is, because I'm looking for a big move on that. Dollar Canada, 134.03. I'm looking for a 134.35 resistance. You break that, we're all headed up to 140. Gold, now we've got to keep an eye on this, because it seems it's coming back to the fore as a safe haven. 1300 should repel it, but it might not. And there's some very bullish perspectives out there. It rose for a 5th day to the highest level in almost a month, as tight US race spurs haven demand. LME index, have a look at this, up 23% from the January low. There's been a big recovery that sort of snuck in there without people really noticing, and everyone's picked up on it now. Crude oil, let me put up the New York price, $46.30. Nothing holding it up but OPEC jaw, and that's not even working anymore. Brazil's drought has gotten so bad that the country's instant coffee makers, the world's top suppliers, are no longer entering into new export contracts. That's interesting, isn't it? Have a look at this coffee prices. This is from Bloomberg. They've been on a bit of a tear this year. The soluble industry can't replace Robusta with Arabica as roasters do. We are being asphyxiated. Brazil's domestic prices for Robusta beans surged about 44% this year, reaching all-time highs. And then have a look at this. This is, if you think of coffee as a breakfast commodity, another breakfast commodity is orange juice futures, which surged to an all-time high close, according to Javier Blas. We've seen quite a big move. Look at that, metals and in the soft commodities. It's pretty interesting. Emerging markets, the spectacular chart below, one which awaits every fiat currency at some point, says Zero Hedge, shows how many bolivars $1 buys. As of today, it is 1,567. It was 1,222 7 days ago. Take a look at this. This is Dubai from the sky, 984 days ago. Dubai International Airport is the world's largest international airport, 78 million passengers in 2015, with a 13% average compound annual growth rate since 2000. That Dubai is sponsoring a $3 billion airport finance deal to enable passenger traffic target of 146 million by 2025. And that rightly says, I wrote about this in February 2014 when I said Dubai is the real transit state, a connection point in this interconnected century, and you can see that they're playing to that strength. Let's move on to Africa. Ethiopia's Haile Mariam's cabinet reshuffle is not enough to address protesters' demands, says NKC African Economics. More than 20 ministers have been fired in Ethiopia's cabinet reshuffle. According to CCTV, I don't think it's going to be enough. I think the problem is much deeper than that. To me, what is clear, and I wrote about this in October, I was referencing a first visit I made at the time of Melesh, immediately after a whole fracas happened in the middle of Addis Ababa, because the opposition looks as if they're going to carry the city. And I said, what is clear now is that the dissent has metastasized to the point the regime has seen fit to impose a 6-month state of emergency. And it's pretty serious. And I think these are cosmetic changes, and really they're going to have to throw open the party to absolutely everybody in order to dilute the Tigrayan influence, because it's a minority influence and it's not working. I was also talking about the cushion bearer. The emperor was very short and therefore had to be perched on cushions in order to be higher up than his subjects. And it was the cushion bearer became more powerful at the imperial court in Addis Ababa. Kapuscinski recounts the tale of Lulu, Haile Selassie's lapdog. Let me show you a photograph of Haile Selassie holding his dog Lulu in Vancouver in 1967, when I was about 2 years old. Don't think any African president has ever done this. Kagame drove King Mohammed to the airport, photo courtesy of Ali Naka. The interesting point was, whilst that's going on, there was the whole fisherman thing and protest developing, but he's now gone back, I think. Time to account for crippling the state. Mandela Foundation takes a swipe at Zuma. Bloomberg have got a great article about how apartheid torture steeled Gordhan for political warfare. Pravin Gordhan has captured South African President Zuma and applied the tangled weave strategy to the president. And the capture of Zuma is very bullish for the rand. I was in London when Pravin Gordhan was being told by Lionel Barber how Lionel had met Julius Malema deep in a safe house in the Kruger National Park. Pravin turns to Lionel and says, "Welcome to the underground," which is a very witty individual, I must say. And that takes me back to, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. And I think this is what is happening to President Zuma. It's becoming very tangled. He's looking very, very silly now. South African oil shares up 0.61% this year. Dollar versus rand has firmed up in line with Gordhan capturing the president. Egyptian EGX 30 plus 20.58% in 2016. Nigeria all-share minus 4.85% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange down 13.38% this year. AIM News, Moz News Agency, Mozambique publicly owned electricity company EDM, increased its prices as of Tuesday by between 27 and 40%. And this is the fallout from $3 billion going missing. I wrote about Mozambique this weekend, Mozambique from boom to bust, a cautionary tale. I spoke about the time we visited in 2012, and I recall the wife being seriously astonished when we jumped in a taxi and the driver turned out to be Portuguese. And I said to her, Mozambique could be the next Qatar, as we stuffed ourselves with wonderfully flavoursome tiger prawns, but unfortunately it's all gone horribly wrong. 31st of October, this was my piece, I quoted Africa Confidential reporting that Chancellor Merkel asked President Nyusi when he met her in Berlin in April, where's the money? Are you in charge? I kind of wanted to ask him a TCAD, but I didn't. But I sort of landed my connection. Finance Minister Adriano Meloni told investors October 25 that the country was in debt distress. Have a look at this photograph from Maputo taken from the sea. At least 3 politicians have been killed in less than a week in Mozambique. DRC opposition buries members killed during unrest. Have a look at this photograph. Mourners carry the coffins containing the bodies of protesters killed in September rallies. And I spoke about this in May last year when I said we need to ask ourselves, how many people can an incumbent shoot stone cold dead in such a situation? 100? 1,000? 10,000? And I said this is another point. There is a threshold beyond which the incumbent cannot go. Where that threshold lies will be discovered in the throes of the event. Business optimism in Kenya has dipped as banks cut lending, survey shows. This is the Standard Chartered survey. Nearly half of Kenya's banks handled NYS 1.6 billion shillings of dirty cash. This is highly problematical. EcoBank will be closing nearly a third of its branches by the end of April next year as it seeks to push business through digital channels. I wrote about this on the 29th of August when I said this is a Schumpeter moment for banking. A Schumpeter moment is when the gale of creative destruction describes the process of industrial mutation that incessantly revolutionizes the economic structure from within, incessantly destroying the old one, incessantly creating a new one. I'm saying a gale of creative destruction is blowing through the banking sector. Nairobi all shares down 5.07% this year, uplifted by things like Safaricom. And you see that when you compare it to the NSE 20, which is down 20.13% so far this year. Once again, thank you for stopping by. I'm always grateful.